Welcome. Your more than generous contributions have aided the Leverian a great deal. This is Atlas, hard as stone. This is Atlas, hard as stone. Is it any surprise that his story begins with an asteroid? Temple Telemon had cast a spell on the indentured masses with a song that heralded the coming of a great stone destroyer, a god who would shatter the world and lead them to a great rebirth. The Orokin mocked the cult's off-key singing, their spasmodic dancing, but the spell only grew stronger. Telemon broadcasts would oft-times wedge into control channels to spread their doomsday message. For the suffocated lower castes, the notion of something more powerful than their Orokin masters must have been intoxicating. A brutal Orokin crackdown seemed to be working, until an asteroid was detected on a collision course with Earth. The Telemons celebrated it as prophecy writ true, divine intervention. For the first time in living memory, the Orokin showed vulnerability. It did not matter that the destruction would be total. For the Temple, this was a sign of a new age. This is too much, but I will accept it. A probe was sent to the asteroid, perhaps seeking proof of divine intervention. It found intervention, though it was anything but divine. The rock had been fitted with colossal steering thrusters, and manning those thrusters, a bevy of well-armed Telemon. Having taken fate into their own hands, they set about a final convulsive dance aboard that rock. Battle cruisers, Orgon missiles, a gale force of Dax. The Orokin could have resolved this in any number of ways, but their enemy was not the Telemons themselves. It was their ideas. Atlas alone was sent. As he crashed onto that rock, his Shakiro helm greeted the cultists. Note the angled ballistic plating and reinforced neck protection. He would soon need both. For years, historians felt this tale of Telemon quite improbable, an artifact of Orokin propaganda myth. Then, on our system's outer edge, we found a debris field of small rocks and dust in a lazy elliptical orbit. Upon these rocks, we find the remains of peculiar stone statuary. The petrified figures, clearly temple members, have been frozen into a tableau of struggle and death. Or was it perhaps a dance? This remarkable find forces us to rethink the entire tale as fact. The stratum Cyandana, reserved and austere, until you turn it over and reveal the glowing hue of the amethyst crystal within. a breathtaking geode. The stratum cyandana, reserved and austere, until you turn it over and reveal the glowing hue of the amethyst crystal within. A breathtaking geode. Imagine its spiraling ribbons as Atlas tore toward the killer asteroid's thrusters. His plan must have been to reorient them and push the rock away from Earth. But, as the story goes, as he neared, the cultists detonated the thruster's footings and sent them careening into space. They were no longer needed. Mass and inertia would carry the rock to its fate. Atlas was out of options. Or so the Telemans thought. The Techo are perhaps my favorite pieces in this gallery. Note the intricate, ornate moldings, the complex blades. Quite the contrast from Atlas's otherwise workmanlike appearance. The beauty and craftsmanship conceal the true purpose of the Techo, as indentations found in cultist skulls attest. I have to wonder what frenzied dance would have been interrupted, or if the whiplash strikes and jabs of the Techo might have blended into the crowd's fitful celebration. Before you, a rare sight, two rumblers, painstakingly recreated from fragments of the aforementioned tableau. How these inert and rigid formations are compelled to life by Atlas defies reason. Yet it is true. Consider the confusion of those Telemans as the very stone they worshipped came to life and set upon them. How could they retaliate against such a thing? Like sparring with a landslide. Earth swelled on the horizon as the cult mocked Atlas with their chorus, "The stone shall shatter all." Across the system, every Teleman echoed that final hymn. Children as far as Neptune turned their heads from greasy broth and gazed toward Earth. Would that careening stone change everything? Atlas kneeled down, head and hands pressed to the ground in apparent defeat as the Teleman's hymn grew even louder. But Atlas was listening, feeling the way the stone trembled to the hymn's pitch. The faults within the asteroid became vivid to him, and so a new song rose up. Rumblers, erupting in a godlike rhythm, beating along the faults until Atlas, alone, struck the final resonant chord. A tremor forked through the rock until, all at once, the great asteroid exploded, its dust falling as scintillating rain, sparking across the atmosphere, and then gone. The Teleman's song fell silent, and children as far as Neptune turned away and swirled their spoons in greasy broth. History teaches us that we long for a better world, but hunger too quickly to do anything about it. Unexpected. I'm speechless. Nova. Mercurial. Unpredictable. And a miraculous example of harnessed antimatter. It would be a bold fool indeed who tried to tame lightning. One such individual was Wholesome Yer, a freelance problem solver who commanded high fees for his low morals. A deficiency that netted him great success in endeavours where a conscience would have held others back. He is the only figure known to have secured a back-channel charter permitting him to selectively raid certain rails, so long as Orokin ships were avoided. The story of Nova and Yer survives via the captain and security logs of the Orokin vessel Mascus Theodolite. It survives because it was deemed to be of historical importance. Orokin investigators scrutinized every frame of security footage, each line of the captain's log, for assurance that the outcome of this encounter was indeed true. Welcome. Now, square your shoulders, for you are in the company of greatness. The passenger vessel Mascus Theodolite reported critical problems with her engines. Nova, mistress of antimatter, was deployed to relight the Theodolite's antimatter reactor before the vessel was drawn into the gravity well of a nearby planetoid. 10,800 passengers were at risk. Clipping this Iondana to herself, she exited her lander. The interior of the ship was deathly quiet. But then, chaos. Behind her, the section of the ship securing her lander was detonated and blown free, stranding her for the time being. From deeper inside the ship, cries for help. Nova sped toward the shouts of trapped crewmen. 8 were locked in flow control behind a hardened glass wall. Opening a wormhole between herself and them, she phased the crewmen to safety as their compartment flooded with lethal gas. Booming from speakers in every hallway, Wholesome Yer declared himself. Wholesome Yer, the man who at one time had run the Pluto Resistance, who spent 3 years terrorizing the rails between Jupiter and Venus just to prove that he could, who took that notoriety and translated it into a career. Security, political assassination, courier runs, torture, graft, blackmail, and in one case, so it was said, genocide. There were graves already dug for him by the many who wanted him dead. Word was, Wholesome already had a tomb prepared for himself on some distant moon, with a table piled high with riches and a chair just waiting for him to be sat in for eternity. A man capable of anything, and a man who would rather die than lose. A man easily recognized by the signature item before you. It was, so they say, an item of great personal significance to the old rogue. Why, and what history it shared with him, is a matter of some speculation. Unaware she was being led into a trap built just for her, I don't imagine Nova took any special precautions. This Flux model helm, for example, was fairly standard. The appealing venting displayed her antimatter nature, an announcement of power as much as an evocation of beauty. Where were we? Oh, aye, yes. Nova and the rescued crew moved for the escape pods. Once they were clear, she would about-face and find some way to free the remaining 10,792. Alas, Thuds and clangs resounded as every life pod ejected into space. Empty. Yer clarified, boomingly, that escape was not an option. To punctuate this assertion, bulkheads slammed down in every corridor ship-wide. The only path Yer left open, worryingly, was the one that led directly to the Theodolite's antimatter reactor, the very thing Nova had come to save. What was the old pirate playing at? Yer answered Nova's unspoken question. He had jettisoned the antimatter core. Without that, it was impossible for the reactor to function, and the Theodolite would smash into the planetoid in a matter of minutes. Yer had been paid, by persons unknown, to neutralize Nova completely. Yer, a man who prided himself upon an ignorance of the impossible, had agreed and devised this trap. Nova was a being created to contain and harness antimatter. The antimatter drive no longer had a fuel core. His proposition was simple. Nova would enter the reactor chamber, crack her own containment, and kickstart a new reaction using her own body as fuel. She could save 10,800 lives, but only at the cost of her own. She had minutes to decide. With a flick of her wrist, Nova's haiku throwing stars took out every camera in eyeshot, killing Yer's surveillance of them. This done, she turned to the technicians she had just saved. She would need their help. Nova walked to her doom. As she entered the reactor's chamber, Yer smugly assured her she was doing the right thing. Within the reactor's observation room, the technicians nodded assent. This was going to be close. From the bridge, Yer sealed the reactor chamber's blast doors. Seconds later, on Nova's signal, the technicians overrode that command. The doors shot upwards, and Nova wormholed out of the chamber and back into the corridor. Leaving that portal open, she created another, straight up into the vent system. On the bridge, Yer had little time to react, but react he did, ordering all prisoners to be killed. In that moment, a portal flashed into existence, Nova launching herself amidst pirate, captain and crew, and showed them what she was made of. In a blinding flash, Yer and every mercenary on that bridge was deeply infused with Nova's antimatter, starting a chain reaction within them. Yer realized what was happening, but too late. With a few precise shots from her Syra customized sniper rifle, Nova neutralized those mercenaries who were quicker off the mark, before grabbing Yer by his brightly irradiated hair. Hurling him back through her network of wormholes, Nova sent wholesome Yer pinging from portal to portal before tumbling out into the reactor chamber. The wormholes collapsed. Yer struggled to his feet as every molecule in his body approached critical. Behind the glass, the technicians gave him a final, grim salute before slamming the blast door closed. Wholesome Yer, pirate and legend, went Nova. The reactor caught the reaction. The technicians harnessed it, and the engines of the Mascus Theodolite roared to life. It was, indeed, the boldest of fools who attempted to leash lightning. And so, a notorious rogue, said to be unkillable, met his end in the attempt. as the historical record now demonstrates.